Hey, let's jump to a connection talking about something I am absolutely in favor of, and it involves, of all things, the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, and its sections that look to jumpstart the hydrogen economy. Now, hydrogen is an opportunity that, if done right, combines environmental benefits and legacy domestic energy opportunities in regions like Appalachia, and private sector labor unions like the building trades, and private sector capital investment. It brings all those things together. It's a rare chance for government policy to do something constructive. In a recent op-ed, which I provided the link to on this episode of the Far Middle Summary that hopefully you saw when I posted it, it highlights the once-in-a-generation opportunity staring us in the face. Now, this op-ed was penned by a trio of leaders in Western Pennsylvania, and the opportunity they highlight extends way beyond this region. So the three authors were Matt Smith, who's the Chief Growth Officer at the Allegheny Conference on Community Development. The second was Darrin Kelly. He's the president of the Allegheny Fayette Central Labor Council of the AFL-CIO. And the third author was Greg Bernarding. He's the executive business manager of the Western Pennsylvania Building and Construction Trades Council. Now, what they're advocating for is going to change countless lives for the better. They rightly see the IRA's hydrogen and energy transition sections as being a perfect fit for places like Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania and Appalachia to become a beacon of transformation primed to redefine America's cleaner energy future. That's how they put it. And I love the way they put it. The authors point out that President Biden's plan to tackle climate change, if you look at the details, demands swift economy-wide decarbonization. But it's got to be done in a way that creates and preserves good-paying jobs, including union jobs. And it should boost resilience with both economic and environmental improvements that everybody says that they want and that we all indeed need. So these are challenges, the doers that you find in places like Pittsburgh, Western PA, and Appalachia that we are wired to solve. And America's middle class and the blue-collar workers out there and the trades, they've done this before and they're ready to do it again. Reading through this op-ed, it reminds us, I think, that hydrogen can check all of these boxes where other options, say wind, solar, batteries, they're going to only check some of the boxes, if any. Hydrogen's widely recognized as the most effective way to reduce emissions from industrial sectors like steel and transportation, cement, various manufacturing industries. And then Pittsburgh and Appalachia, that set of regions or that region itself can be the epicenter of such an effort. No doubt about it, if it's done right, I know it's a big if, but if it's done right, this can drive a legitimate, not a pretend, energy transition. And as we've discussed on this podcast, far too many of these energy transition efforts are myths and pretend. They're not based in science and fact. Now, why does this hydrogen economy and the IRA provisions that speak to it, why does it have such great potential? Because it just so happens that Pennsylvania's distinctive hydrogen opportunity includes an issue that's uniquely Appalachian, and that is with respect to fugitive coal mine methane, or CMM, emissions. Now, coal mine methane, it's a widespread problem. It accounts for roughly 10% of U.S. methane emissions, and it contributes to 13% of industrial sector emissions in places like Pennsylvania. And coal mines, they continue to emit methane even after they're inactive. And there's really no sort of set of standards, and there's certainly not a strong economic case for capturing fugitive coal mine methane. So it's both a challenge and an opportunity. It depends on how you approach it. Coal mine methane represents a key opportunity, if you look at it in that lens, to develop a viable path to clean hydrogen at a scale that's necessary to decarbonize the region's highly concentrated and hard to abate industrial activity. So coal mine methane can be the feedstock to hydrogen processes in sort of Appalachia's industrial and manufacturing sectors to help decarbonize. And if it's properly enabled and maximized under the Inflation Reduction Act, coal mine methane-based hydrogen production, it'll be able to create, and this is in the op-ed, nearly 700,000 jobs, 700,000 jobs in the Pittsburgh region over the next 2 decades. And it would inject over $200 billion into the regional economy with investment. The authors in this op-ed identified over 30 unique projects, each with the potential to create close to 20,000 jobs per project. Wow. However, and there is a however, these projects, they can only happen with the Treasury Department properly recognizing the climate positive impacts of coal mine methane abatement and the beneficial use of that fugitive coal mine methane. It's simply, by the way, what the law, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, says should happen. It's the intent of the law. It's what the law says should happen. But it does require the bureaucrat at the Treasury Department to follow it when it issues guidance on what the law is going to do. And therein, constant listeners, lies the danger. Because the key to realizing these benefits, it requires that Inflation Reduction Act being implemented and executed the way it was intended to be by Congress. The law passed by Congress and signed by the president, it has to be managed by the bureaucrat consistent with what the law says. And if you listen to this podcast long enough, you know that's always a problem with today's administrative state. Administrative state tends to go rogue and do its own thing in conflict with the law. So the fear is that entities like the Treasury Department is going to issue guidance on how the law should be interpreted, and it's going to unilaterally decide to subjectively apply overly restrictive measures for the IRA's hydrogen production tax credit that could make or break the ability of a region like Appalachia and things like coal mine methane abatement to lead the clean hydrogen economy. Now, they can't counter what the law says and what it intended. That's not how the Constitution works, but you know well enough by now that it can and does happen far too often. So without the full 45V hydrogen production tax credits that the IRA specifies, fugitive methane would continue to be emitted into the atmosphere. That's not good. And the viable hydrogen production paths, they're not going to be available to this highly concentrated, hard to abate industries like steel manufacturing, cement, etc., that you find in Appalachia and beyond. None of that would be good. So if the end goal is to achieve meaningful emission reductions while boosting competitiveness and preserving those good paying blue collar jobs, hey, we're going to need policies that unlock this potential, not hinder it by the bureaucrat arbitrarily dictating based on ideology and not science and math or the law, which feedstocks or projects qualify for funding and which don't. Yeah, we need an objective approach that's consistent with the Inflation Reduction Act's technology agnostic intent and one that incentivizes cutting new and current emission sources. It's simple and it's rational, and those authors did a great job summarizing up the opportunity. So the Treasury Department, what's it need to do? It needs to finalize 45V hydrogen production tax credits within the IRA that's consistent with what the law intended. That will facilitate a significant climate positive set of actions and impacts when it comes to fugitive methane's beneficial use. If you do that, it aligns with the original congressional intent, and it also aligns with President Biden's signature on the IRA, and it follows the process defined by the good old Constitution. What a thought. So I had to share that op-ed with you. Again, give it a read. It's a great sort of summary, and it touches on so many far middle themes: energy policy, climate policy, doers, the administrative state, and so on. The IRA, hydrogen economy, Appalachia, coal mine methane, chock full of core themes for sure. And thank goodness there are still leaders like Smith, Kelly, and Bernarding. It might sound like a law firm, but it's actually a team of leaders.